No, wait a minute. Regina's doing the YouTube right now.
You should be an announcer, Brian. We're now live and recording.
Well, it fits my face for radio. So.
All right, we're ready to start, Mayor.
The City Commission meeting of July 14th is called to order. Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Here.
Dr. Estrop,
Here.
Mr. O'Neill,
Here.
Mr. Rue,
Here.
Mr. Copeland.
Here. Let us pray. Our God, we're particularly concerned for our citizens who are sick. And we are sorry that some of them have died from this virus that's all over us and the country, worse in the South than here, thank goodness for us. But we ask your presence with them and their friends and family, and help us to make good decisions for the people of Springfield this afternoon. In your name we pray.
Amen.
Please for the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag of the United States of America, and that the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes. Clerk will proceed with first readings by title only.
Amending ordinance number 15313, granting a franchise to First Transit Incorporated by amending section 2 and subsections 13E1, 13F1, 13F2, and 13F3 to extend the franchise for up to an additional 1 year, establishing maximum city financial participation for the 1-year extension, and establishing the management fees for the 1-year extension period. Authorizing the finance director to purchase 2,750 tons of rock salt for the 2020-2021 winter season from Cargill Incorporated De-icing Technology for an amount not to exceed $190,190 through the Ohio Department of Transportation Cooperative Purchasing Program in accordance with the provisions of section 5513.01B of the Ohio Revised Code. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a cooperation agreement with the Springfield City School District Board of Education to assist the city and the Board of Education in creating and maintaining safe and orderly schools, and confirming and approving services provided up to the passage of this ordinance.
Are there any questions or comments from commissioners on first readings?
Yes. I think I have a question on all of those. The first one with the First Transit Incorporated, the franchise, we're doing 1 year and not 5 years. Is there a reason for that?
I'll have Mark answer that.
I think I'm unmuted there. Yes, Commissioner. The reason that we're doing that is when we had our last triennial review from the FTA, they were concerned about our 5-year renewal extensions that we had in the initial contract. So we are at some point within the next year going to have to rebid this. But because we have been short-staffed during the pandemic, we'd like to extend it for a year to be able to do a better job. In addition, we were concerned that we might not have any additional bidders. Even though we're satisfied with what First Transit has been doing for us, we would like to make that process as competitive as possible and put that out there for bid probably in spring of 2021.
Okay, thank you, Mark. My next question, I guess, is for Brian and Chris. Did not we already vote on the de-icing at some point, the rock salt, what was that we voted on in May?
Yes, earlier this year, we did vote on to participate in ODOT's collaborative or cooperative purchasing program for rock salt. This is the actual award of contract to the vendor Cargill. I'll let Chris kind of give the specifics of the amount that we're purchasing compared to what we have on site or on hand currently to cover us for this upcoming winter season.
Yes, Commissioners, so we have 4,077 tons of salt on hand, and this allows us to buy up to another 2,750 tons, which, as we prefer to do, would give us access to enough salt to cover our biggest winter out of about the last 30 years. Salt this year is down 13% from last year, so the pricing was favorable.
Thank you. My last question on these three is, we're voting for the school resource officers. Do we know that school is going to be taking place this fall?
Yes, so I can answer that first part. So right now, the Springfield City Schools did release a plan that's looking at both online and in-person school happening this fall. Obviously, that's very fluid based off of the current situation. So they're continuing to develop that. They do plan to start school on August 26th, which is when it was scheduled on the calendar year. So they do not plan to change that at this point in time. And again, they're researching what portion will be online, what portion will be in person in the classroom. As far as this agreement, Lee, if you want to touch base on it and what it covers for our school resource officers, that would be great.
Yes, thank you, Brian. Commissioners, this is very similar to the agreements we've had in the past, where we'll have 2 officers present in high school and 2 officers that share duties through the junior high schools. They kind of travel back and forth. Really, the only real difference in this one is we did recognize that the school, we weren't in session for half of the year. And so we're kind of taking that into account a little bit in the agreement to kind of make that difference up to the schools, with the understanding that obviously, it will increase within the next couple of years. But this is a 2-year agreement, and it'll be pretty standard to what we've been doing in the past.
Okay, thank you.
We also have questions on first readings. Clerk will proceed with second readings.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a geographic information sharing GIS intergovernmental cooperation agreement with the Board of County Commissioners of Clark County, Ohio, for sharing of GIS data between the city and the county and making the GIS data available to the public for an amount not to exceed $30,000 for the 5-year term.
Move to adopt.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the city manager to enter into a Clark County City of Springfield Geographical Information System 2021 to 2025 consortium agreement with the Board of County Commissioners of Clark County, Ohio, and the Clark County Auditor for a shared geographical information system, GIS, and to allow the county to provide GIS services for the city of Springfield, Ohio, for an amount not to exceed $220,000 for the 5-year term.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an amendment number 6 to the lease and special fixed base operator agreement with Middletown Regional Flight Training Institute, LLC, doing business as Champion City Aviation, to allow for the continuation of flight training and aircraft maintenance services at the Springfield-Beckley Municipal Airport.
Move
So
to
moved.
adopt.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estromp,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Confirming purchases and the obtaining of services for the city and providing for payments therefore and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estromp,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
providing for the issuance of bonds to pay the property owner's portion in anticipation of the collection of special assessments heretofore levied of the cost of constructing sidewalks, curbs, and gutters comprised in the 2019 Sidewalk Curb and Gutter Program at various locations throughout the city and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions?
I do have a question. Brian, is this anticipation of catching up, or is this a reaction to the COVID, or what are we trying to accomplish here?
Yeah, this is actually for last year's sidewalk curb and gutter program. So work
Right.
that occurred in 2019. We send those assessments to the auditor, and the auditor collects those over a 5-year period. So this puts the bond issuance in place for us to cover the total cost, which is $50,100. And as we collect those assessments over that 5-year period, they go back to paying off that bond.
Very good. Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estromp,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
determining to proceed with the improvement of public streets and easements by constructing and installing on certain property within the city street improvements, water and sewer lines, storm drains, and all necessary appurtenances, and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions, comments?
I'm wondering if, Brian, Mr. Heck, if you could review again where these will likely occur.
Yeah, and this actually, so I'll address really the next 4 items are all related to each other. This is related to the Bridgewater subdivision, which is the new housing subdivision being constructed on the east side of the community off of South Tuttle Road. These next 4 ordinances allow them to move forward or proceed with phase 2 of the project. If you recall, phase 1 of the project was for 71 lots to be made available and have services, both water, sewer, road infrastructure, gas, electric, etc. This would open up for phase 2, which is 59 additional lots, bringing the total subdivision platted to 130 lots at this time. And again, this would allow them to continue on. The phase 2 really covers the most eastern side of the development and actually provides that second connection out to US Route 40. So this will provide basically a loop connection from 40. You can enter off of South Tuttle Road, or you will be able to enter in at this new location. The developer has been working with ODOT to get clearances on that access point. I believe at this point in time, it's going to be a right in and right out only. These next 4 ordinances would allow them to commence with that second phase. They have just as of yesterday, I was updated that they have sold 32 lots in phase 1. So not quite halfway in phase 1, but they're getting there. And they believe if they can get the next phase under construction and completed by the time the asphalt plants close, that will set them up well for the winter and spring to continue to sell lots in this subdivision.
My memory is, Mr. Heck, that sales in this particular subdivision are going very well compared with some of the other properties owned by this company. Is my memory correct in that regard?
Yes, they had a very good spring sales season. It's slowed down a little bit over the last month or so, but their focus right now is building the homes. If you have a chance to go out there and look, they have at least 8 or 9 under construction as we speak today. But they'll focus on getting these 32 homes up, and they believe as that activity and people move in, that will encourage and lead to additional sales in the development. So much so, again, why they are interested in moving forward with getting phase 2 under construction.
All very good news. Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Levying special assessments for the improvement of public streets and easements by constructing and installing on certain property within the city street improvements, water and sewer lines, storm drains, and all necessary appurtenances, and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions from the commission? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue, Mr. O'Neill.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of tax increment financing revenue bonds in the maximum principal amount of $1,750,000 for the purpose of paying costs of road, water, and sewer improvements near the intersection of US 40 and South Bird Road, paying certain financing and other costs of the bonds, authorizing various related documents and instruments, and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a plat agreement, Bridgewater subdivision phase 2 between the city and Bridgewater Project 1 LLC. Authorizing the city manager, law director, and finance director to do all things necessary to implement the said plat agreement, Bridgewater subdivision phase 2, and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to apply for an airport improvement program grant with the Federal Aviation Administration in an amount up to $463,244.50 for crack sealing repair on runway 624 and design of the rehabilitation of runway 1533 at the Springfield Beckley Municipal Airport. Authorizing the city manager, law director, and director of finance and airport manager to do all things necessary for the submission of the grant application and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements and declaring an emergency therein.
So
Move to
moved.
adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Yes. How much is this costing the city of Springfield?
Yes, I'm asking Seth Timmerman, our airport manager, if you'd like to answer that question.
Yeah, so in 2020, with part of the CARES Act, the FAA is actually paying 100% of all AIP programs that are through the AIP program, improvement program.
So we're not paying anything. This is 100% paid for under the CARES Act.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Confirming and approving, applying for, and authorizing the city manager to accept a grant through the Ohio Department of Transportation Aviation Division in an amount up to $31,600 for the removal of obstructions which are hazardous to air traffic landing at the Springfield Beckley Municipal Airport, authorizing an expenditure of up to $8,400 to be used as local matching funds, authorizing the city manager, law director, airport manager, and director of finance to do all things necessary for the submission of the application and acceptance of the grant, and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements, and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
second,
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Since we're talking about hazardous conditions, Seth, you wanted to comment on the accident that was out there over the weekend?
Yeah, so we this is actually on the end of runway 24, so not involving that end or the ends obstacle removals that we're talking about. But we had a Saratoga, which is a 6-seater aircraft, ran out of fuel just short of the runway, and took out a few trees and a fence on the end of runway 24, about a mile off the end. But everyone was okay, and the FAA is investigated, and we're in contact with the insurance company now to take care of that aircraft.
All right. Glad nobody hurt. That's important.
Right.
Great news.
Anybody else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
yes,
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Confirming and approving, applying for, and authorizing the city manager to accept a grant through the Ohio Department of Transportation Aviation Division in an amount up to $224,755 for the replacement of precision approach path indicator lights on runway 624 at the Springfield Beckley Municipal Airport, authorizing an expenditure of up to $59,745 to be used as local matching funds, authorizing the city manager, law director, airport manager, and the director of finance to do all things necessary for the submission of the application and acceptance of the grant, and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements, and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to
moved.
adopt.
Second.
Moved, seconded. Questions from the commission? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
yes,
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Confirming and approving, applying for, and authorizing the city manager to accept and grant through the Ohio Department of Transportation Aviation Division in an amount up to $129,362.50 for the replacement of precision approach path indicator lights on runway 24 at the Springfield Beckley Municipal Airport, authorizing an expenditure of up to $34,387.50 to be used as local matching funds, authorizing the city manager, law director, airport manager, and the director of finance to do all things necessary for the submission of the application and acceptance of the grant, and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements, and declaring an emergency therein.
So
to
moved.
adopt,
Second.
second,
Moved. It's been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
yes,
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 7 to the contract between the city and Moody's of Dayton Incorporated for the well pump cleaning and rehabilitation project to decrease the contract in an amount not to exceed $24,850 for a total amount not to exceed $1,644,113, and authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 7 and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or comments?
I was wondering if perhaps Chris might tell us. I'm delighted it's a decrease. I'm just wondering what was the cause of the decrease?
So commissioners, the cause of the decrease was we're changing the methodology that we're using to clean the wells. The wells are approaching 60 years old. They've been on a cleaning cycle of every 3 to 4 years since they've been installed. And each time we clean them, it's just not quite as effective as it was the last time. So about 4 years ago, we started with a method that used liquefied carbon dioxide, that when it changed states, it would expand and contract and break away anything blocking the well screens. It has not performed as well as we would have liked. So we generally do 3 wells a year. What we have done with this deduct is we've eliminated doing 2 of the wells this year, and we're trying a new method on 1 of the wells. That way we can see how it works, see if we get more results. If it does indeed perform well, we would come back for another deduct change order to change the other 2 wells to this methodology and move forward with those.
Thank you very much. Now, these are the wells that feed the city water supply is what we're talking about here. So these are critical to our water supply.
Correct. These are the 12 wells that are along Mad River near Eagle City Road. There are 6 on the north side of the road and 6 on the south. And they're 120 to 115 feet deep. And we have to make sure we get down to the full depths of those and clean the screens off so they can properly intake the water.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes,
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Milcon Concrete Incorporated for the West Main Street Sewer Project for an amount not to exceed $338,845 and declaring an emergency therein.
so moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from commissioners?
I was wondering if Chris might tell us exactly what we're getting for our money on this.
So one of the great things we get for our money on this is the elimination of a combined sewer overflow. In many cases, we're reducing a combined sewer overflow. This one actually eliminates it. What it will consist of is a new 8-inch sanitary sewer in West Main Street, from Walter Street out to Park Road, just past the BP station there as you're entering town. And it will allow the properties that are currently connected to the combined sewer in that area to be connected to a strictly sanitary sewer that takes the flow directly to the wastewater treatment plant for full treatment.
Outstanding. So this is going to be something really positive as we constantly are monitored by the US and Ohio EPA, and also provides for more sanitary water coming out of our system.
Absolutely. And the price came in at $30,000 under the engineer's estimate. So we were pleased with that also.
Super. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes,
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an LPA agreement number 30082, amendment number 2, between the city and the Ohio Department of Transportation in connection with the McCride Avenue project, PID number 104831, to reflect the revision of funding allocation between phases of the project and declaring an emergency therein.
so moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or comments? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes,
Mr. Copeland.
Yes. That concludes our agenda. Are there other items that come before us from commissioners?
I just wanted to mention an article that was in this morning's paper that the COVID-19 testing is this evening. No, I'm sorry, it's Wednesday, tomorrow, between 12 noon and 6 p.m. at Perrinwood School at 431 West John Street, for those that don't get the newspaper.
And I think Brian wanted to make some comments about this.
Yeah, thank you, Warren. As Commissioner Chilton stated, the health department in partnership with the city of Springfield, and I do want to give kudos to our community development staff who have worked hand in hand with the health department to help make this happen through the use of some of our CDBG COVID dollars that we received from the federal level. So I appreciate the work that Shannon and her staff has done to help make this possible. But they are hosting these COVID-19 community testing pop-up sites. And kind of the motto is all ages, no cost, no appointments, no doctor's orders needed. They want you to come out. They want you to get tested if you want to get tested. As Commissioner Chilton stated, tomorrow's is at Perrin Woods Elementary School at 431 West John Street from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. They have a third location identified that would happen on July 22nd. So the following Wednesday at La Condesa Grocery number 1, which is located in the shopping center at 440 South Burnett Road in Springfield. And that one will also be from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. And all you have to do is park at the location and you walk up and do the test and then go, and then you should get your test results back within a few days. This is important for our community as testing is an important component to combating this. Understanding those that are positive, even those that do not display any symptoms, is critical so that we can stop the spread of the coronavirus in our community. And so the health department, again, in partnership with the city, is offering up these free testing sites. The first one that was held last Wednesday only had about 460. It's great that we had 460 people participate, but they want to double those numbers. They want to be close to 1,000 or more that get tested at these individual pop-up test sites. And so we're encouraging individuals, take advantage of this. It's free testing that you can take advantage of within our community. So again, appreciate the support of the health department and what they've done for our community during this difficult and challenging time. And then also our community development staff and the city for stepping up and partnering with the health district to make this possible.
I asked a question, Brian, about the testing, and you may not have the answer. I did talk to Charlie the other day, but so are they asking you to get tested just because, or if you're showing any signs or have any type of condition? They just
You don't have to have displaying any type of symptom if you feel that you should be tested or would like to be tested, because again, as we're finding, many people are asymptomatic, but they are continuing to spread the virus even though they are asymptomatic. So understanding and knowing those that may not be showing symptoms that are still positive is an important figure to have for our community and the health district as they look to combat this virus.
And I will say, I had the test and it wasn't that bad. And when I had it, they did the swab where they stick it, in your nose. Now my sister went back the next day and they just did the inside of her nose. They did not do the other one. So it's not that bad. And for our community, this is so, so important. So I just want to encourage our citizens to please go get tested.
I agree. Mr. Estrop.
3 questions of Mr. Heck. One, how are we doing staffing and service-wise in terms of COVID-19? Secondly, for Mark, how are we doing financially? And then thirdly, how are we doing on the South Side development, particularly the grocery store?
So I'll take the number 1 and 3, and I'll ask Mark to speak to number 2 after I finished. From a staff perspective, we're doing good. We're continuing to provide the level of service, same level of service that our citizens have come to expect. We have had, unfortunately, a few members of our team that have been under quarantine for various purposes related to the coronavirus, COVID-19. But we're hopeful that they'll be returning to us very soon and out of quarantine. But I know at past meetings, I've been able to say that we've had nobody in quarantine. That's not the case currently, but we hope that everyone recovers or reaches their 14 days with no complications and they're able to return back to us in a quick manner. But from a staffing and service level perspective, things are going well. As many people know, tomorrow is the extended tax filing deadline, July 15th. So I know our income tax division has been very busy. A couple of the commissioners that came into the building today for this meeting may have seen many people out in line waiting to work with our staff on their income tax returns. So again, if you need assistance, you can come down here. Today we're open till 5, and then tomorrow will be 8:30 to 12:30 before that deadline. But I will also encourage those that just have W-2 wages, go online and fill it out online. It's a very easy, quick, simple process to complete that online through our website at springfieldohio.gov. Save the time having to come down here, stand in line, and wait to have your income taxes done. And then outside of that, we continue, the majority of our buildings are still closed to the public outside of the first floor of City Hall, Air Station 1's lobby for permits. But we are adjusting and adapting well. Our employees are doing a great job of adapting to the challenges that face them from COVID-19. The majority of our workers have returned and are back in the buildings. We're just, the difference is we're not really open for the public, but we're continuing to have outside stakeholder meetings and so forth so that we can continue to move projects forward, which leads me into the South Limestone project. As you know, Commission approved last meeting an LOI with Larry Dillon and Dillon Corp for the redevelopment of the former Kroger location on the south side. Our team, Logan and Tom specifically, have been meeting with Larry to plan out the stakeholder meetings. And we're looking to have several stakeholder meetings abiding to the no more than 10 rule over the course of the next few weeks, specifically probably the last week of July, first week of August. We'll have several of those stakeholder meetings that will help inform Larry and the developer to the development, and then he'll start to build a business plan based off of the feedback and the input and the recommendations he receives from those stakeholder meetings. So we're looking forward to getting those things started. Also, some good news that you'll see somewhat down the pike, but the first phase of the South Limestone project, which is the section from Leffel Lane to Lansdowne, has received safety funding from the state of Ohio. So the state of Ohio did come through on our safety application to provide funds so that we can start to transform the corridor, the transportation corridor, to the vision that was developed again by largely public involvement, public input in a study that was completed a couple years ago. We will now be able to start putting in motion and actually seeing some construction occur here in the relatively near future.
All good news. Thank you very much. How are we doing financially, Mark?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about that, Commissioner. Frankly, we're still doing well. Cash-wise, we are slightly over 13 million in unencumbered cash in the general fund, which is a good number, holding about where it's been for the last 3 months. Our total cash is at $68 million, which is typical for us. We, for the first 6 months, have run a surplus of $620,000. So that's the good news side of things. The other side of it that continues to concern me is that in June, we were off by a significant amount in income tax, 17%. That reflects economic activity in the community, mainly in May. So as we move into July, the end of July and the end of August, that will really tell us the tale of how things are doing as we start to reopen the economy here in Springfield. So I don't want, that's a concerning number to me, but frankly, that's not going to be the true barometer. I think the true barometer will be for the July numbers and the August numbers. We've continued to hold the line on spending, and as I've said many times before, we're trying to manage the resources available to us. And I think I've mentioned several times also that I expect it to be a long summer. So really, July and August will tell us more. But at the moment, we are doing fine.
In terms of time, it appears as though, unfortunately, relative to our finances, we're catching up with some of our other communities our size and maybe a little larger. Unfortunate, but not unexpected.
That's correct. And again, we have had to defer spending, and while we've been hiring in the public safety arena, we've been very strategic in the other areas of the city about filling vacancies. And that's how we've been able to hold the line on expenses.
Well, keep up the good work. Thank you.
Sure.
The major difference between us and those cities, Dave, is we haven't had to cut back services as much as some of them have had to do so far, at least.
Right. I recall some did layoffs and furloughs as well as capital projects in trying to balance their budgets. So yeah, we're fortunate in that regard, Warren. You're absolutely correct.
Anyone else? Jill, I believe we have someone from the outside.
Yes, I have comments received from Mr. David Sanford at 528 South Yellow Spring Street. He had two questions. One, there is a transmission shop on Yellow Spring Street reported by the EPA to have transmission fluid contamination. Was the EPA notified prior to new pavement installation, and was an answer received prior to the pavement? Second question is, there is a building being demolished on Yellow Spring Street near the same transmission shop owned by the owners of Marathon Quality Foods. Is that owner paying for the demolition?
I can answer on the parking lot specifically. It is a repaving of an existing parking lot. One, they would not have to apply through us for a parking lot permit because it's just resurfacing an existing parking lot. And my understanding is that EPA did not require any notification for the paving of this lot because, again, it was just seen as general maintenance of an existing parking area or parking lot. Steve Thompson handles our demo. I can ask him if he is aware of the demolition. Obviously, he's aware of the demolition, but if the owner is responsible for those costs or if he is working through one of our programs. So, Steve, if you would want to answer that question, that'd be great.
Sure. So I believe this might actually be the house at 615, 617 West Pleasant. And that's one the owner's demolishing on his own. It's not using our money.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Anything else, Jill?
That's all I had this time.
Anything else?
It just wasn't the same. That wasn't the same. I miss seeing David.
He's anxious to come back to in-person meetings.
Which actually, I was going to ask this question when I thought about David and others that would like to participate in these meetings live. To look at, I know you'll ask us again towards the end of the month and get the commission's consensus on coming back. But do you have a plan, possibly like if we do go live, maybe in August, are you thinking about putting shields in between so we can actually be live, or just space? You probably don't have to answer that now, Brian, but that's just my thoughts about how we can actually have an answer. If we do come back, this is how it'll look, and maybe even restrict the room to 10 visitors or something that can have reservations. I don't know.
Yeah, one, I'm continuing to follow other communities throughout the Dayton region and what they're doing on my Dayton managers call and roundtable. But also my plan for when we do return to the forum would be to be similar to what we did when we first started this pandemic, or the exercise around the pandemic, where we space each commissioner out with a seat in between, and then the staff level people, individuals would be down at the work session table. And then we would need to consider if we allow an audience in, which I believe government functions could allow for the more than 10, as long as we had safety protocols and precautions in place to protect them, is my understanding from listening to some of the other Dayton managers. would allow us to space people appropriately in the pews or the seats in the forum if we return or when we return to the forum if the pandemic is still going on. So I have thought about it to a degree, and yes, I'll come back to you. Right now with the numbers where they're at, I would probably recommend that we stay virtual through August at this point, and then re-examine it after Labor Day, but I'm open for discussion on that.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
If there's not anything else, does anybody want to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved in second. Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrom,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes, meeting's adjourned.
I
Thank you
got